Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Allyn, I don't want to speak for anyone else on the committee, but I've taken your comments today and in previous meetings to heart and feel very strongly that we need to have a much larger force size than the one that we are currently on a trajectory to achieve. And we need to fund those areas in modernization and readiness that you describe at risk today at some point in the future. I think that the challenge for me, you're giving us your best professional advice, which is critically important. We now have the task of convincing our colleagues and explaining to our constituents why this is important. And so a problem at some point in the future is a little bit more difficult to bring home than something that is today at risk or a consequence that we can point to. And I don't know if this is something that we could answer in this hearing, but to the degree that you can provide us with those scenarios or anecdotes or facts, I think that's going to make our job easier in terms of getting the resources to you and the Department of Defense to ensure that we don't run into these problems in the future. One of the points that you've made in your testimony and before is that within the Army, we're at $500 million over in excess and underutilized capacity. Where would you apply those dollars if, and I know BRACs don't work this easily or cleanly, but if that money could be transferred to some other use, where would you put it?
Well, thanks, Congressman, and thanks for your support of our Army. It is very much appreciated. We understand our responsibility to better describe the impact of underfunding our Army for today and the future threats that we face. Specifically to your question of the $500 million being wasted on excess infrastructure, that $500 million would go a long way toward helping increase the sustainment, restoration, and modernization divot that is currently programmed into our budget. We've only funded it at 67% of known requirements. And of course, nature has a way of causing things unexpectedly, like the leaking front window in my own house during this recent rainstorm. So we have to take very hard decisions about where we spend our money. And for the Army, we have 21% more capacity than the program force will ever require. We're doing everything we can to tighten our belt internally, but we really must make very good decisions rather than waste $500 million for facilities that are not being used in our Army today.
Makes a lot of sense, and I hope that the political will and political collaboration exists or will develop to allow us to do that, because I think you've made the case why it's so important that we transfer that money to where it can be better and more effectively utilized. In your testimony, you talk about selective modernization efforts, and you mentioned Army warfighting experiments. Could you go into a little bit more depth and detail about what that entails?
Well, both our network integration exercises or evaluations and our Army Warfighting Assessments, as you know, leverage the great capacity at both Fort Bliss and White Sands Missile Range from New Mexico. And they are absolutely at the center of how we build the future force. We are specifically focused in our Army warfighting assessments on exercising new concepts, new ways of employing our force, leveraging our current capabilities and emerging capabilities that are being developed in industry. We have learned some incredibly valuable lessons just in this past year on the exercises that we've done at Fort Bliss, Texas. And we are applying those both in the development of our future force and the operational concept to defeat peer competitors. And I think what's also very important is every one of those exercises have been joint. We've often had the United States Marine Corps participating with us. We've always had the Air Force participating with us. And they have all been multinational with our closest allies. And that has enabled us to tackle the really difficult problem of interoperability. We know, given a smaller force, to win in the future, it will be with our allies and partners. And they must be able to interoperate with us. We must share a common operating picture, and all of those are being exercised routinely at our Army Warfighting Assessments.
Thank you, General. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr.